Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. I want to thank you so much for being here today as we roll out our Kramer Beverage fundamentals. I think it's going to be an excellent morning. We're going to get a lot of great time together and really doing a deep dive into each of the fundamentals and what they mean. So let's jump right in. The fundamentals. Think back on the history of the company. There's been a lot of momentous occasions. I think about 2002 is when we moved into this building. 1992, when we won the Founders Award. 1986, we were awarded the Coors franchise. 1979 is when we were able to purchase the rights to Schmitz and Rolling Rock. 1964, the year that Charles started in the business. All very important dates in our company's history. When we look back in the future, and we look back on the momentous occasions and important times, I really truly believe that the implementation of our fundamentals will be part of that list of really important times. So with that, why is this important? Why are we here? Well, you all have gotten your card by now, and everyone has a card, right? Great. What the fundamentals are helping us to do is to better define the values and principles and behaviors, the words right on the front, to help create that formula for success of our company. There's two things I think that really brings out with these fundamentals. First of all is clarity. Clarity in what is expected, what we can expect of ourselves, what we can expect of each other, how we interact internally, also with our customers, our vendors, and everyone that we come in contact with. The second thing is consistency. So knowing what is the behaviors that we're striving to achieve consistently on a daily basis. And when I think about this, it makes me think of, has anyone ever taken a survey where the answers are always, sometimes, occasionally, rarely, never? Well, the thing is this. This isn't an all or nothing game. There's going to be times with these fundamentals. Everybody has a bad day. Or you might, a fundamental that you missed the mark. It just doesn't happen. But that's okay. It doesn't mean anyone failed or there's anything wrong with that. But the idea here is as the fundamentals become ingrained in our everyday culture, in our everyday behaviors, first of all, I really believe each of us, if that happens, we're going to course correct. We're going to know. We're going to identify that, hey, our actions did not match up with our fundamentals. So then what do you do from there? Really what you do is you correct, you fix, and you move on. And that's really it. And so it's not about that we always have to do this, but it's the idea that this is the everyday behavior that you see, anyone would see when you come to Kramer Beverage. And that's really what I see what this is about. And it's such a great opportunity. And as you've seen it, you've read it, I hope that you're as excited as I am about the potential that the fundamentals have for us at Kramer Beverage. Because culture is so incredibly important to the success of a company. And if a company has a poor culture where people don't care about their work, the quality of their work, they really have no interest in their coworkers or in other departments and how their work impacts other people, that is a company that will not succeed. Just will not have the success that it could be destined to have. But on the other hand, you talk about a company that has that culture where there's a set of beliefs that everyone follows, that everyone believes in. Everyone understands how their actions impact other departments. I mean, that is the sign of an outstanding company. And that is what I want for us. We're a very good company. We have great people. We have great brands. We have a great facility. We have great policies and procedures. We're a very, very good company. And I think I want what everyone wants in this room. I want to become an outstanding company. One of those companies that people want to be at, that look to, that set the tone and set the standard. So that's what I think we have the potential to have in front of us. And I hope you'll be on that journey with me. So moving on, I want to thank some people because this is a journey that started many months ago with an off-site retreat with the executive team back, ironically enough, October 8th, which I think is exactly 4 months ago today. And this document would not be the document that it is today this card without the help of Cindy and Jack, Susan and Greg, Tim and Lane. So I'd like to thank them right now for their help. If ever there were a team effort, this was one. And that's why I'm so proud of the final version that we have before us. The second person I'd like to thank and also introduce is David Friedman. Now David, I met David 6 months ago, back in August. I heard him speak about the fundamentals and how they worked and what they meant and the impact that they had on the culture of his company. Now I'm sure he's going to go into that, so I don't want to take any of his thoughts. But when I was listening to his words, I thought this is something that we could really do here and could have a major impact. And so we spoke shortly after that and got this process started. And I want to also thank David, because without his fundamentals that he created in his company many years ago, we wouldn't have this document here. And this is something that many times you see values on the wall, or it might be a mission statement, and it just becomes wallpaper. That's not what this is about. Part of the reason why you see the definitions is so there's clarity into what we mean by these statements. Because statements can mean different things to different people. And then further, the biggest piece of this is what happens after today. What we do to create rituals and institutionalize these values into our everyday actions. And that is something that you will see a lot of, and the actions will back up the words that we're saying today. So with that being said, I'm really excited to jump into it. So I want to stop talking, and at this point, I want to introduce my friend, David Friedman.
Thanks, Mark. So just a couple comments at the outset. So what Mark said is absolutely true, that this is really a big opportunity for you guys. You have a great company, and you have a chance to really become a world-class company. And that's a whole different thing. And so much of being a world-class company is really about building the kind of consistent, high-performance culture that Mark was referring to. Now, and I'll talk later when I'm working with you in smaller groups, but my background is that I did the things that you're talking about here in a company that I ran for many years and later sold, and have been helping other companies like you guys to do this kind of stuff. I think the most important thing that you can understand about what's going to happen after this is, how do we keep this from just becoming, a nice big thing that we were all excited about on February 8th of 2013, and then it fell by the wayside? Because we've all had that experience, haven't we, where you get all excited about something and you roll it out, and 2 or 3 months later, life goes back to normal and we forget about all that stuff. We've all lived through that garbage and that waste of time and that BS, and that's not what we're doing here. And so how do we keep it from really becoming that? Well, the key to that is what you're going to hear about, which are what I call rituals. And there are several things that are going to happen that are going to cause us to really stay focused on these fundamentals. And in particular, what we're going to do is we're going to focus on one of these every single week. And so next week you're going to begin, and we're going to start with fundamental number 1. And there are a number of things that are going to happen with that. The first thing that's going to happen is that every week, Mark is going to send to you a voicemail and an email with this week's fundamental and a lesson about it. The second thing that's going to happen next week is that in every meeting that you guys have in this company, you're going to begin that meeting with a short discussion of this week's fundamental. Every meeting that you're in. Now, the second week, that'll be next week, the second week we'll go to fundamental number 2, and you'll do the same thing. And the following week you'll go to number 3, and we'll do the same thing. And at the end of 24 weeks, because there are 24 fundamentals, we're going to go back to the beginning and do it over again. And after that 24 weeks, we're going to do it over again, over and over and over for the rest of your career. So that's what helps us to focus on this stuff and keep this from becoming the fad of the week or the fad of the month or the quarter. No, this is going to be the initiative for the rest of your careers here. And the way we do that is by focusing on one every single week for the rest of your career. So that's what you're going to expect to see, and you'll see how that plays out. What we're going to do today, let me just touch on very briefly the logistics for this morning. What's going to happen is when I'm done, we're going to split up, as Mark said. Those of you that have an HR on your name tag, you're going to stay right where you are. Those of you who have the SR, you're going to go in the room behind us. We're going to spend about an hour and a half, and what's going to happen is, in the other room, Mark is going to lead you through a series of exercises to give you an opportunity to really work with these fundamentals and understand how they apply to real situations. At the same time, those that are staying in this room are going to be with me, and we're going to do a different set of exercises to really give you a chance to understand and think about and work with these fundamentals. So we're going to spend about an hour and a half doing that. We're going to then take a 10-minute break, and then we're going to switch rooms. So everybody that started in this room is going to go there. Everyone that started in the other room is going to come here and do the other exercise, so that each of you will get both of the exercises, the one that Mark's running in that room and the one that I'm running in this room. When we're finished with that, we'll come all back here and we'll wrap it up and we'll be ready to roll. The result of all of that is that you're going to get a real chance this morning to go much deeper and really, you know, it's one thing just to read this, oh, that sounds good, good stuff, but to really understand what does each one mean and to think about it and to process it. So that's really what we're going to accomplish this morning, and then the real thing is following this, rolling it out next week and starting to practice every single week, the fundamental of the week. So let me explain what we're going to do and how this is all going to work. So what I'm going to do is we're going to take these 24 fundamentals and we're going to break them into groups of 6. So 1 through 6, 7 through 12, 13 through 19, and 13 through 18, and 19 through 24. And what I'm going to do is just very briefly talk about each one of them. Really, what's the essence of this fundamental? Why is this important? What does this really mean? And then after I talk about each of those first 6, I'm going to ask you in your small groups to have some discussion with each other on 2 questions. The first question I'm going to ask you to talk about is, as you look at just the first 6 fundamentals, which one of those most resonates for you? It kind of like you say, man, I'm all over that one. I love that one. That's what I'm about. Second thing I'm going to ask you to talk about with each other is, which one of those first 6 do you think will be the most challenging for you to practice and why? And so it's not like a group vote. I just want you to share, you know, you may each, in a group of 4, you may each have a different point of view. So one of you in the group may think one and someone else may think another. I just want you to talk with each other about those 2 questions. Which one most resonates for you? And secondly, which one do you think will be most challenging for you and why? And then I'll give you 5, 6, 7 minutes to do that. I'll wander around the room and join in some of your conversations, and then I'll call us back together again, and then I'll ask for some volunteers to share what your perspective is on which one is most meaningful for you and which one is most challenging for you. So we'll just have some good discussion about those, and then we'll repeat the whole process for the next group of 6 and so on, and we'll finish right on time. Got the plan? All right. So the first one is the first one for a very obvious reason. It says, do the right thing. And it's really about integrity more than anything else. That looking at every situation and asking yourself, even if nobody else was looking, if nobody else knew what I was doing, what would the right thing be to do? Integrity is really about just having that be a gold standard, that you always do the right thing. If we stay focused in every situation on always doing what's right, that's how we build a reputation. We all know that, you know, it takes years to build a reputation of trust and integrity, and yet screw it up once, that reputation is gone really quickly. It doesn't take much to destroy a reputation. So it really requires a vigilance to just make sure that we're always focused on what's the right thing to do. So that's the first one, and it's the first one because it is really the most important. The second one says that we want our customers to love buying from us. Now, you guys are very unique in that your customers have to buy from you. I don't know any other industry that's like that. They have to buy from you. And yet that creates some interesting challenges, because though they have to buy from you, you don't want them feeling like, oh shit, I'm stuck with these guys. You want them feeling like they're excited to work with you. They're glad they get to choose you, because buying from you is a good experience. And the way we do that, and the way we really want to do that, is not by, you know, giving them the lowest price about everything. I mean, we have to be competitive, of course. You create an experience for them that causes them to say, these guys are a pleasure to work with. And how do we focus on making sure that everything we do creates that experience, that every touch point with that customer is one that causes them to say, hey man, those guys are great. I love working with those people. They're one of my favorite people to work with. That's where we really want to be. The third of the fundamentals says to make quality personal. And it really is a personal thing. And we talk about making quality personal, what I'm referring to is this sort of hypersensitivity to making sure that everything you touch is the best that you can possibly do it. And this covers really every aspect of your work. From, how many times do you see a piece of paper, a form printed, and it's a 7th generation photocopy at an angle where it's kind of gray and it's hard to read? What statement does that make about quality? And yet for a lot of people, they don't even notice it. It doesn't even occur to them that it looks lousy. When you really get quality, you focus on everything from how it's printed to how you answer the phone, what the page looks like when I print it, to how you deliver, beer, to how you do everything that you do, because it's the only way I do things, because my work has my signature on it, and I'm going to make sure it's damn good. And it's really about recognizing that the reason to do really high quality work isn't simply because, the customers will love you. Even if I didn't get paid any more money, even if I didn't get any more customers, because that's not why I'm doing it. I'm doing it great because that's who I am. Because I'm just one of those people that what I touch is going to be great. That's what quality is really about, and making it really personal. And there are lots of organizations that aren't about that. And by the way, there are lots of wonderful people who don't get the quality thing. And it doesn't make them bad people, it just makes them people who should work in other companies. The people you want here are people that have a passion that in your gut, more than any other place, it's in your gut that you say, I'm doing it great, because that's who I am. And that's why this one is so personal. The fourth fundamental says that we're all in the customer service business. And this one's really about the recognition that, every one of you truly is in the customer service business. It's not just the customer service department. That every one of us serves other people. It doesn't really matter what your role is. Your primary job, each one of you, is to serve somebody. And when you really get that and you stay focused on who are you serving, what do they need from you, and how do you make sure that you're doing a fabulous job for them? And by the way, what's the best way to find out what they need from you? Ask them. Yeah. It's amazing how often I hear people talk about, well, I have a feeling that this is what they would really value. Well, you don't have to have a feeling. Go ask them. Whoever your customers are. And again, many people have internal customers. Know who you're serving and understand what they need you to do for them, and then blow them away. Do an incredible job for them. The fifth of your fundamentals says to find a way to make it happen. And this is really about being resourceful and not using excuses and saying, you know what, if the customer has a problem, whoever my customer is, it's my job to find a way to fix it. We've all had the experience of sometimes you deal with a company and you call them and you have a problem. And the first thing they want to tell you is why they can't do it. Our procedures say A, B, and C. And they're more focused on making sure they follow their procedures and being able to say that it's not their fault than they are focused on, well, how do we make this happen? Contrary to that, we want to start our conversation by figuring out how we can do it. Be resourceful, figure it out, be creative. It may end up being the case once in a while that we just can't do something. That can happen. But our starting point of our thinking is, let me find a way to make this happen. What can I do? How can I find a way to make this work for the customer? Find a way to make it happen. And the sixth of our fundamentals says that we're a team and that we depend on each other for success. And it's really about the recognition that none of us can possibly work in isolation. That to deliver the results to your customers requires a whole chain of people, each doing their part. Whatever you do impacts other people too. It's not just you. So if you write up an order in the wrong way, think about all the downstream people who are affected by that. It's a lot. Do one thing wrong, and all kinds of other people are affected, from invoicing to packaging and shipping to delivery. So learn to understand how what you do touches a variety of other people, and to consider what you're doing and think of how does this impact people and how do I make this most successful. You stay really focused on, okay, how do I make sure I'm doing things right, and how do I think about what I'm doing and how it impacts others? Because we're all related, we're all on the same team. So let's take a look at those six. And once again, I want you in your small groups to have a discussion about these two questions. First is, which one of these first six do you think just really works for you? That's just, man, you're all over that one. And secondly, which one of those first six do you think will be the most challenging for you to practice and why? So let's go ahead and do that now. I'll give you 5, 6, 7 minutes. I'll wander around the room a little bit and join in your conversations, and then I'll ask them for some sharing.
And if you fall, then I have to pick you up.
The type of person you are and your company ultimately.
It's not things that we've done, it's stories of other vendors that we have.
Let's regroup and let me have, so who's willing to share one that for you really speaks to you, that it really resonates for you? Go ahead.
Okay, obviously number one resonates and it's number one for a reason, but we're going to go a different route. We're going to do the team building part, the team experience, because we have such a wide range in our team here from Carol at the front desk, where if she receives a call that, there's a draft line that's broken, if Carol just decides, well, I'm going to lunch now, I'll take care of it when I get back, and then forgets, well, that affects, Kirk, who's, that line is not pouring, it's down, so we're losing sales there. And then when Mike eventually goes to fix it, the customer's angry, he's got to deal with that. So really, the team does resonate throughout the whole company, how one person acts compared to,
How about another one that really resonates for you? Okay.
Number 3, make quality personal.
Yeah, why is that big for you?
Yeah, everything you do is reflective of yourself, but also of the company you work for. So,
yeah,
you want to make everything personal. That you want to do your best.
Yeah. Do you see people, not necessarily in this company, but do you see people around you who don't necessarily share that point of view? Yeah. Who's got another one that really resonates for you? Go ahead, Eric.
I think I'm going to kind of go along with Joe. I mean, we talked about the same dynamic that we have from sales to management to operations, and talk about number 6, like your team depend on each other for success, because it's the same concept. Like we're filling out paperwork for an order. If we put it on like a green sheet, it's not so clear, and then if I get to approve it, I might make corrections on it. By the time it gets to Grace, that it's a matter of just interpreting what I decided to put on it. It would just affect everybody. So when it gets pulled, it's going to go back to the sales reps, Joel or Dan, and you're like, wait, that's not what I did. But using the best intention, Grace would think that's what you wanted. I put what I thought we wanted, and it's just there's a lot of hands. Like I think we have to understand the process more of how many people are affected, like you said, by what we do, and if we miss one thing on paperwork, how that can actually spiral into something else.
Yeah, great example. How about one that's challenging for you? Yeah, go ahead.
Make quality personal.
Yeah, why is that challenging, do you think?
Well, I mean, I have the thought process of I want everything to be great. Sometimes we have time restraints that happen, and sometimes we have to avoid, for the one thing is to avoid taking a shortcut sometimes to make things happen, and sometimes setting that expectation for yourself. You want it to be great, but consistently delivering great results is a lot easier said than done, and
you're right.
That's a challenge. Not that you don't want it to be great, but that there is a challenge in making that expectation fulfilled.
Yeah, I think Mike makes a good point that we can want to do great work. It's easier said than done. It's hard. These are tough. And particularly when you have a lot to do. If we only had one thing to do, it's easy to do it great. But when you're juggling a lot of different competing priorities, it can be very challenging to try to really stay focused on doing quality work. I was having a conversation in the back of the room with some people there about this whole issue of quality. And it's my experience and belief that there are many people for whom quality just isn't that big a deal. And as I said earlier, it doesn't make them bad people or anything, but it's almost as if they don't even notice it. Like you go to a doctor's office and you see this sloppy handwritten sign with a piece of tape on the wall about like how they want payment up front or something. And you think, like, with computers, you could actually make that sign even look nice and even write it in nicer language than they do. But I think that most people who do that, it's not that they're saying, I don't care. They don't even notice it looks bad. It doesn't even occur to them that there's like a genetic mutation that they're missing, a certain part of the chromosome that is the part that has quality on it. And they just don't get that. Were you saying that way?
It was funny because as we were talking in our group, I had that as my most challenging.
Okay.
And it's not because I don't want to do great, it's sometimes quantity comes over quality.
Yeah.
And, that we were talking about, well, Why is that? And what do I got to do to not make that the factor, to make sure that everything that I produce is the best stuff I do?
Yeah, it's a great observation. How about one more that's challenging for somebody? Yeah, go ahead.
Like I was discussing with my group, I think this one's going to be overlooked, but doing the right thing. I think it's the obvious choice for the most important, but I think we forget how hard that can be sometimes, because doing what we think we should do or the right thing might not always be the right thing internally. Might be hurting someone else, or it might be a really tough decision.
Yeah, I think Mike makes an important point that this is more subtle than it at first appears. That, like anything else, things don't exist in the absolute. Doing the right thing for the customer may not be the right thing for the company. Or doing the right thing for the company might not be the right thing for the customer or for another employee. And so there's a lot of gray to these things, which is why it's important to be talking about them and discussing them and thinking through them and working on scenarios like you did there to try to understand, well, where are the boundaries around things? Because it is not black and white. It's still, the principle is still the same. Do the right thing. But defining what the right thing is isn't always obvious. It's a great observation. Yeah. Well, let's take a look at the next group of 6. So the 7th one says to be responsive. And this is about getting back to people. That, you know, when people, and this is internally and externally, when people call you or email you or fax you or text you, they're looking for you to respond. That sounds so darn obvious, but how frustrated do we all get when you leave a message for somebody and they never get back to you? And you don't know, did they even get the message? Are they working on it? Is anything happening? And it leaves us feeling like, did it fall in a black hole? To at least just respond to say, I got your message, I'm working on it, I should be able to get back to you by Friday. Great, got it, you're on it, take care of it. Learning to be responsive is just critical to doing great customer service, and that's internally as well. We all talked about here how dependent you each are on each other. You are asking things of each other and need to be as responsive to each other as you are to your customers. So responsiveness isn't just an external thing. So learning to really stay on top of things, and a part of responsiveness as well is keeping people in the loop. Because there's no way as a team you can be effective if you're not responding well to each other. So responsiveness is huge. The 8th one is one of my favorites, and it says to practice what we call blameless problem solving. And this is such an interesting concept. You know, in so many organizations, when something goes wrong, the first thing that happens, it's your fault. He did it. Or we're trying to figure out whose fault it was. And when we do that, not only are we not focusing on solving the problem, it causes us then to become defensive. As soon as a problem happens, the first thing you hear out of people's mouth is, well, it really wasn't my fault. I did this and I did that and I tried this. Forget about that. I mean, and I understand that's normal, because if you're in an environment where you're used to being blamed, what we're missing is we're not learning anything and we're not fixing anything. So what we mean by blameless problem solving is that when a problem happens, there's 3 things we want to be focused on. The first thing is, let's fix the damn thing. So I don't care whose fault it is. Let's just get it solved. Second thing we care about is, let's go back and learn and see what took place so that we can understand what took place. Not so we can figure out whose fault it was, but just so that we can get smarter from the experience. And the third thing we care about is, now that we learned something, we understand what took place, what caused that, now let's implement a new process. Let's change what we're doing so that we have a lower likelihood of repeating the same mistake. You know, it's one thing to say, boy, I really learned my lesson. Well, are you doing anything different? Unless you're doing something different, then you didn't really learn your lesson. It was just an intellectual thought. So we want to fix the problem, we want to learn what happened, and then we want to apply that learning by changing what we do so that we reduce the likelihood of repeating it. What's missing in all of that is blame. Because it doesn't matter whose fault it was. It's just not useful in any way. The 9th one says honor commitments. Boy, is this a big one. Honoring commitments is really about doing what you say you're going to do when you say you're going to do it. It's that simple. And so many of us struggle with this one, not because we don't care or because it's not important to us, but often we struggle because we say yes to too many things that are unrealistic. And yet what's interesting about this is, if you're one of those people who usually honors your commitments, even most of the time honors your commitments, 80% of the time honors your commitments, that's as good as 0. Why do you think I say that? Because I don't know if you make a commitment to me, is this one of the 80% or is this one of the 20%? If I can't count on for sure that if you said it, it's done, then I can't work that way. I can't rely on it. And if we create an environment where we can count on whatever we said gets done, wow, is that a difference? And we'll talk more about, how that happens. Boy, is that a big one. The 10th one says to set and ask for expectation. And what it says here is that we judge situations not by what happens, but rather by how it compared to what we thought was going to happen. And that's the real issue. And so the easiest way to understand this is to think of a simple example. If a customer calls you and they ask you if you could find out an answer for them, and you say, yes, I'll get to that as soon as I can, and you call them back tomorrow morning, and you're just so proud of yourself, man, I just got that answer so quickly. Meanwhile, they might be pissed off because they thought you were going to get to them this afternoon. And conversely, I call Jeremy, and I ask Jeremy, can you find out that answer? Let's say that he gets it to me tomorrow, and I think he is amazing because I thought this was going to take a week. I can't believe he got it back to me that quickly. And so the issue isn't that he got back to me tomorrow. It's not tomorrow morning that's the question. The question is, how did that compare to what was in my head? If it was better than what was in my head, he's a hero. If it's worse than what was in my head, he's a bum. And if he doesn't know what's in my head, he doesn't know what's going to happen. He's just rolling the dice, hoping it works out. And when you really get that, you start realizing that, man, it's pretty darn important then to make sure that I know what the expectations are, that I either ask them and or set them for them. And we engage in a conversation with each other so we're both on the same page and we both understand the expectations. Because you're going to get judged by those expectations. So when you understand that, you learn to get really rigorous about every conversation you're in. Ask and set expectations. The 11th one says to work with a sense of urgency to get things done. And this is about, let's make it happen. Let's not just talk about stuff forever. Let's not sit in a meeting and discuss options and then end the meeting without taking action. Let's be decisive and let's make things happen. Let's have an orientation to getting it done and having urgency about things. And the 12th one says that we're performance driven. And it says here that, while we appreciate effort, we celebrate and reward results. Because at the end of the day, results are really what we're here to get. And it's interesting how often you will hear people talk in terms of effort. So how do we do on that account? Well, I left them 17 messages, and I tried really hard, and I called this person, I did that, and I did this. And you know what? If you didn't get the answer, it doesn't matter. Because the client isn't paying you, the customer isn't paying you to try. They're paying you to get it done, to get the answer, to fix the problem. And so we want to be oriented to not so much effort, but results. Performance is about achieving the results we're looking for. And we use numbers and metrics to help us figure out how we're doing and what those results are, and we hold ourselves accountable to achieving results. Yes, it'll take work, but the goal isn't to work hard. The goal is to achieve results. And we don't ever want to lose sight of being performance driven. All right? So let's do the same thing. Let's take 5-6 minutes, and in your small groups, let's talk about which one of those is most meaningful to you and which one do you think is most challenging for you to practice and why. All right, let's go ahead and regroup. So who would like to share one that really resonates for you? Derek?
I put 2 because they're the same. 7 to 9 demand to be responsive and honor commitments.
Okay.
Are kind of the same concept when I look at.
Similar.
You gotta always just acknowledge and respect others' time. So I mean, if you're really busy, you see you have like a couple emails from people that are trying to get a hold of you. Just acknowledge their time, what they're doing, and kind of buy yourself time at the same time, like doing it. Like, listen, I'm not gonna be able to get around to you. And that's the same thing, is they might have a commitment or a deadline that they need it here by, and then you might get it out of them when you say, hey, listen, I'm really busy, I won't get back to you until this time. You give them that, and then they say, well, I need to know by Friday. At least that conversation is happening with them. So
it's a great point that when you get, sometimes we hesitate to set expectations because we're afraid that the other person might have unrealistic expectations. I mean, what if they think I could do this right away and they don't understand it's going to take a week? And so we don't have the conversation. Well, that doesn't set us up for failure. Better to at least engage in the conversation and find out if they have an expectation that this can be done faster than it's possible. Let's at least talk about that, and maybe we can come to some other agreement. Maybe I can get you part of the answer by Thursday and the rest by next week, or maybe we can make some other arrangement. But the better we are at having that conversation up front, the more likely we're going to be successful at that. How about one that's really challenging for you? Good.
Number 8, I think it's a 3-step process. Obviously, you want to practice blameless problem solving.
Yep.
You want to find a solution.
Yep.
Get that taken care of. Bring whatever the issue is to any parties that may have been involved, and then really developing a plan to not allow it to occur again.
Yeah.
I think I do 1 and 2 extremely well. Mm-hmm. And then I'll say, okay, you understand what happened? And then I walk away and don't close the loop with establishing how we're going to avoid it going forward.
Yeah, and that's a great observation. It's really common that we do often, as I kind of somewhat jokingly alluded to before, when we say, like, did you learn anything? And someone says, yeah, but if we're not changing anything, then we didn't apply that learning at all. We didn't close the loop, to use your language. And that's the most important part of it, because why keep making the same stupid mistake? It happened, that's fine. We're all going to make mistakes. That's human. But I don't want to keep making the same one. I want to learn from that and make sure that I've put in place things that reduce the likelihood of repeating that. Yeah. Go ahead, Tim.
Number 8, when we first started this process and we talked about number 8, I know personally I squirmed in my chair a little bit more than probably most. I found that that's one of the hardest things I've had to deal with and try to get beyond. One of the things that's helped me is when I try to approach it from a personal perspective and understand that the only person who feels better by focusing that blame is me, so it's very selfish behavior.
Yeah. So
trying to get past that, has helped. Certainly not there yet, but we're working on it. And it's one of those things I think if we can do that institutionally here at Kramer, it'll be one of the bigger steps that we could take.
Yeah, that's a great point. And it's a habit for most of us. And 2 things are a habit, and they're very related. One is it's a habit for most of us to want to point the finger. I mean, look at the whole litigious society we're in. What's that about? It's about blame. It's about being able to say, I tripped on the sidewalk, it must be somebody's fault. So who can I point at? So it's a habit for many of us, if not most of us, to first thought is, all right, whose fault was this? Who screwed up here? The second thing that's related to that I referred to earlier is because it's a habit to point fingers, the habit that goes with that is defensiveness. So when something happens, our first thought is usually why it wasn't my fault. Our first thought is not on how to fix the problem. Our first thought is usually, it really wasn't my fault, stop blaming me, which is a conditioned habit because we're used to being blamed. So when you can eliminate that from the environment, when you really truly don't waste your time thinking about whose fault it is, not only do you spend more time and energy fixing problems, but you also spend more time learning from them, because you're not thinking about whose fault it was and you're not thinking about defending yourself. So it's a tremendously liberating thing. And it's a great point that you make that it is really selfish, to point fingers. It's just a way of saying, well, it wasn't my fault. It's really, when we say it's your fault, we're really saying it wasn't my fault. It's about me. And it really isn't very useful at all. All right, let's take a look at the next group, starting with number 13. An interesting one. Work from the assumption that people are good, fair, and honest. This is interesting. I have found in my life that if you treat people as if they're good, fair, and honest, they end up being more good, fair, and honest. And if you treat people as if they can't be trusted, they end up showing up to be less trustworthy. And interestingly, when we trust other people, it puts a tremendous burden of responsibility on them to live up to that. Think about your kids. The worst thing you could do is trust them, because then they have a burden of responsibility to live up to. You know, if you say to your kids, I trust you to do the right thing here, oh, now they're really screwed. They really have to live up to something. If you don't trust them, they can do whatever they want. You know, trust is a fascinating thing. So when we treat people as if they're good, fair, and honest, as if their intent is the right thing, they usually end up showing up to be that way. They will live up to that most of the time. And this one, by the way, doesn't say that everybody is good. Then it requires some effort when you see something that doesn't look good, fair, and honest. Before we just jump to the conclusion that they're a jerk, well, maybe I should try to stop and understand where they're coming from. Because I know they're a good person and they want to do the right thing, but boy, this doesn't look very good to me. Well, then let me think about it. Let me go find out more. Let me ask questions. Let me try to understand it from their perspective. Because if I understood it from their perspective, I might not agree with what they're doing, but I would understand it. For me to simply pass them off as jerks is just intellectually lazy on my part. Because I don't want to do the work to understand them. So there's a lot about this one that when we really start from that assumption that most people really are good people and they want to do the right thing and they have positive intent. The 14th one, interesting, says check the ego at the door. And in my work with so many different organizations, I can tell you that without any question in my mind, the biggest cause of dysfunction in companies is ego. It's when our own egos control the agenda, when we're more concerned about who looks good and who looks bad, who got credit, who got blame, and all kinds of other junk, our personal agendas, versus what's the right thing to do here? How do we make the best decision? And I don't really care which individual is affected. It's about making the best decision here. When we leave our ego out of the mix, we really become much more effective. It also means not taking things personally. You know, when a decision is made, sometimes we get our ego in the mix and we think, oh, I can't believe they did that to me. Instead of saying, it's not about me. It's trying to make the best decision for the organization. And it's not a personal thing. I don't mean that you shouldn't have a strong ego. Successful people believe in themselves, and you should. You should believe in your capabilities and your attributes, that you are good. Checking the ego at the door doesn't mean this false modesty of, oh, I'm really no good. No, you should be confident. Checking the ego at the door means you don't make decisions to serve your ego. So it's challenging, but critical to success to just leave your ego out of the mix and not get tied into all of that. The 15th one says to listen generously, another huge one. You know, listening is more than just, you know, not speaking. You have more opportunity to influence what happens by being a good listener. And this is hard. You know, it takes real focus to really pay attention and understand another's point of view, to let go of all of the preconceived notions like, I know how Adam is, I know what he's going to say here, and get rid of all that junk and just say, no, let me just clear my mind and really pay attention and understand what Adam has to say. Again, that has nothing to do with whether I agree or disagree. It's irrelevant. I'm just trying to understand. Can I listen with that kind of intentionality? It's hard to do. And for many people, what they think of as listening is more like what I would call not speaking. It's like a walkie-talkie. I'll stop now so you get to say your piece. That's not listening. That's just me not talking, so I give you a chance to say something. You will have more influence over people by how well you listen than by how well you speak. It's just a huge one. We could talk about that one for about an hour. The 16th one says improvement never ends, which is what you were after before. That this recognition that if you really get this, that we can always get better. And great people recognize that there's always an opportunity to improve. You know, the example that I used in the other group was that if you were to stop people out on the street and stop the first 3 people that went by and ask them about their jobs, can you name 3 things for me that you could do better in your job? Most people would struggle to come up with anything. And yet, if you were to stop and interview Peyton Manning and ask him, what are 3 things you could do to be a better quarterback, he would probably have 25. That the people who are great see that they could always be better. And the people who are pretty mediocre can't figure out what they could do better. It's such a fascinating thing. But people who are great just get that you could always be better. And they're in this continuous process. Improvement literally never ends. No matter how good we are at something, we could get better at it. And they have this like fanatical obsession almost with looking at everything they're doing and saying, I know I could do that better. What could I do to improve this? And they just keep looking at it over and over and over again and asking, how could I be better at this? And so we wrote that as, purposely because it says improvement never ends. It's just a continuous process. The 17th one says to speak straight. And speaking straight is really about being honest and direct in our communication, going straight to the person and having a clear, honest, direct conversation in a way that is, the word that I use is forwarding, that helps us move the action forward, that's productive, that's useful. So for me, just to dump my load on Rob because I'm pissed off and it has nothing forwarding about it, that's not speaking straight, that's just me unloading. Speaking straight is having a direct, straight, clear conversation with Rob about an issue that we're having in a way that helps us move the action forward. It's interesting to see how many times we don't have conversations that are in our minds that are necessary for lots of reasons. And the way to know about those are the ones that you get a pit in your stomach about. When you think, oh, I really don't want to have that conversation with my boss, my spouse, my coworker, whatever. And instead of going directly to them and asking questions and trying to understand and cleaning up whatever the issue is, we harbor resentment and we get pissed off and then we, bury it and then we get pissed off at something else later. And it just builds and builds and builds and all kinds of crap goes on that's totally unproductive, instead of going right to them at the beginning and saying, hey, we have a problem, let's talk about it. Let's figure this thing out and get moving on it. There would be a tremendous benefit if you went directly and had the conversation. There's lots of techniques and tools we can talk about how to be better at it, but speaking straight's really big. And the 18th one says to embrace change. You know what? We all know this, that the rate of change in our lives, in our businesses, and everything that we face is just picking up faster and faster and faster and faster. And we can either have a point of view about change that says, oh my God, this is so terrible, I can't believe how much is changing, or we can embrace it. And we can realize that, you know what, this is exciting. Look at all the new stuff coming down the pike. This creates opportunities for me and for our company and new possibilities. I'm excited to find out what new things this means for me versus woe is me, too much is changing these days. And we want to learn to really embrace that and take advantage of it and see those opportunities, because that's what successful organizations do. So let's go ahead and take those 6. And once again, in your small groups, let's talk about which one of these most resonates for you and which one is most challenging for you. So who's got one you'd like to share that really speaks to you? Jim?
I guess not speak to you. I was going to start off on the negative here, but I think that this group is as difficult for the people in this room as any group, because we're salespeople. Salespeople like to hear themselves talk. So conversely, they aren't always the best listeners. I think the border between confidence and ego is so thin. You need to be confident when you're selling. So I think you have people in the room that have a good, healthy ego. And when you deal with the small little businesses that we deal with and our customers, I think sometimes it's difficult to always give them the benefit of the doubt and assume they're fair, because you've been in the business long enough, you're assuming they're all thieves.
Right. So yeah, it's an interesting observation. Yes, go ahead.
I'd say I listen generously, especially if I feel as a guarantee department, not just a manager, but I really have to listen. Sometimes I see too much, so I want to be too analytical about a problem, but I really want to listen to what's going on, so I have all the facts. I don't have to go back to it a second time. I can resolve the problem more expediently than just kind of dragging it out. But also, even my personal life, I have to say, I really do listen very generously.
That's a hard one too. That's great. Yes, Lane.
I think that one is huge, and it's an opportunity we have as a company to do a lot better at. And the reason I say that is we have checks and balances in our system for just about everything we do. And if we eliminate some of those checks and balances and assume that the people are doing the right thing, it'll help us be more responsive, it'll help us be quicker, It'll empower people. And then if something was wrong, you use that as a training,
right?
Not as a finger pointing.
Yeah, that's a great point. What keeps people from having conversations you ought to have?
I think most people are fearful of conflict.
Yep.
And they don't want to be the person perceived as inciting that conflict or bringing up a topic that's otherwise avoided.
How about one more that is challenging for somebody? Go ahead.
Originally, I would have thought that when we first started to check your ego at the door, and then we got to the listen generously, and that's something that I actually have realized over the past year or so that I have needed to work on personally and professionally, and I feel like when I work to try to apply that, going into an account and talk to somebody, you get a lot more done when you let the person speak and you ask more questions rather than kind of go in and just try to bully somebody or tell them how it's going to be done. But I mean, that's just something that is still challenging for me, and I constantly try to work on to improve as a better salesperson.
That's great. All right, let's look at the last group. And the last group starts at number 19, which says to seek to create win-win solutions. And it's really about, can I stop and think about what do you need to get in this situation and what do I need to get? And can I figure out a way that we both get what we're looking for? Because if I can do that, we're much more likely to have a long-lasting solution. And by the way, that requires me to actually stop and understand you. Because I can't figure out what you want. If I'm just so focused in my own head on what I got to get out of this thing, it's going to be hard to come up with a win-win. I have to stop and actually understand you and your needs in order to come up with a win-win. The 20th one says to be punctual. Pretty obvious that when you're on time, whether it be an appointment with somebody or a meeting here or even a phone call, that's a commitment. And being on time for that is honoring a commitment. And when we're sloppy about our timeliness about things, we show up late for stuff, it sends a message to those that we interact with that this person's pretty sloppy about stuff. They're not serious about commitments. And we don't want to be setting that standard. So taking seriously punctuality is a big deal. 21 says to celebrate success. And it's the recognition that if we create an environment where we are regularly practicing what I call meaningful acknowledgement and appreciation, and I make that distinction of meaningful because, oh, everybody's so wonderful here. That's not meaningful. It's a bunch of BS. And all it does to me is it creates mediocrity. Meaningful acknowledgement and appreciation has three components to it. One is it's specific. I'm acknowledging exactly what you did, not this sort of generalized comment. Two is it's timely. It's more meaningful if I said, I really appreciate what you did this morning versus I appreciate what you did 6 weeks ago. And the third part is that if I can talk about the impact that what Adam did had. Adam, I love the way you were contributing this morning. The comments you had about working on the assumption that people are good, fair, and honest really helped a lot of other people to understand it at a level that I don't think they understood before. If I talk about the impact, that's a much more meaningful acknowledgement than, great job today. And so when we really learn to practice that, and in all directions, peer to peer, peer to supervisor, supervisor to direct report, in all directions, when we're regularly acknowledging each other in a meaningful way, has a very powerful influence on our performance. The 22nd one says to be quick to ask and slow to judge. And what this really means is to not be so quick to assume you know what's going on. It's so fascinating to me how often I see people, I'll give you a really simple, quick example. Somebody is late for a meeting. And you decide that they don't respect me, obviously, because they wouldn't have been late if they respected me. So I can't believe that person doesn't respect me. And now because you've decided they don't respect you, you see everything else they do through the filter of they don't respect me. And all these other things happen, go on and on from there. When we learn to stop the quick assumption that I know what's going on here, and we suspend our judgment and we become more curious and we wonder, I wonder what's going on there. Let me ask more questions. Let me find out more. Now we have new opportunities for how to respond to situations. Instead of, see that? I knew he couldn't be trusted. I knew that guy doesn't respect me. I knew he's a jerk. Well, time out. Let me just suspend my judgment and be curious. As I go find out more, it's possible I might discover they don't respect me. But I also might discover that we miscommunicated about the appointment and they didn't know we had an appointment. Or it could be that, they got in a car accident, or it could be any number of things are possible. And often when I find out more, I realize, oh, it's a whole different story than I thought. Okay, that's suspending our judgment, being quick to ask and slow to judge. The 23rd one says to be vigilant about safety. This is a fairly obvious one, that no matter how busy we are, what could be more important than making sure that we're working safely and paying attention to making sure that everything we do, we're keeping ourselves safe. And the last one says to keep things fun. And you know, this one is as important as, you know, as integrity, as important as blameless problem solving, as important as the rest of them. And the reason it's important really for two reasons. One is that you spend so much time at work that if you don't most of the time enjoy what you're doing and have fun with people, then like who wants to be here? I mean, obviously some days are more fun than others, but if you don't, generally speaking, think that you have fun at work, that you enjoy the things that you do and the people that you're with, you should probably go somewhere else because it's not the place you should have fun. Second reason that this is so important is really one of perspective, that when you're as serious about doing high quality work as you guys are and having pride in what you do, it's easy to take yourself too seriously sometimes. And sometimes you got to step back and say, wait a second, you know what? There really are bigger problems. I mean, there's a blizzard coming in the Northeast. There's a lot of people that could be in big trouble. And there are literally people starving around the world and wars going on and all kinds of horrible things happening. You know, the stuff we got here, this is not a big deal. And so sometimes you got to just be able to step back and put it in perspective and laugh and kid about it and joke around and say, hey, again, I care a lot about doing great work, but this is not a life or death issue. And so we want to make sure we're having fun. So let's take 5 minutes and once again, discuss which one of these most resonates for you and which one's most challenging. And then I'll do a quick wrap up and we'll take a break.
Every day. And while I'm serious.
So it just wasn't a big deal. And I never felt like that. Let's go ahead and regroup. So, this was an interesting group. I heard some good conversations. Let's have one that really resonates for you, and why? Go ahead, Derek.
Unfortunately, it's number one for me.
Right.
Such a shock, I'm sure. But I think that 21, the celebrate success, and 24, we keep things fun, is a typical example. It's just everybody knows when you kind of get from the room to do a meeting is you want to make light of the situation, whether it's making fun of I've screwed up a slide or whatever, but kind of just put the fact that we're all human and, you know, mistakes will happen, but we need to kind of have fun with it. But we also need to celebrate the success, and putting those two things together can kind of help egos too and help your motivation. Like when you're sitting there and the program might not have worked as well. I mean, if we all remember the pouch situation, but the good thing that came out of it this year or that year was that we all showed that we could get the distribution. We put a task out there, everybody rose to the occasion, and things that outside of our circumstances, you know, happened. But we still succeeded at it. We had fun while we did it, and we kept a positive, you know, attitude.
And the more you point out the things that went well, the more people do those things. Funny how that works. Go ahead, Kirk.
19 is, in my opinion, dependent on number 22 because you need to ask the right questions to create the win-win solutions.
Yes, that's true.
I know there's a lot of times where we have a lot of new products coming in, and from the sales side, if you want to get distribution on something, you're going to have a lot of roadblocks. You know, I don't have space, or I've never heard of it, nobody's asked for it, all those types of things. So your goal is obviously to get the distribution point, and their goal is obviously to sell a product that's successful and makes their customers happy. So you come up with other solutions. Running a sampling, bring in a few cases, I'll sample it, people can try the product, and that way you're supporting them saying, hey, you're not on your own for this sale. You know, I'm with you to support you through this, and listen, if it doesn't work, we go through the product and we try something else.
Yeah, that's a great example. Super. How about one that's challenging for you? Go ahead.
Safety, pretty much.
Yeah.
Kind of get things done right away.
Yeah.
Not worry about what I'm cutting, what I'm lifting. Just get it done so it's done, and then worry about the cut or your bad back later.
Yeah.
So that's something to improve on.
How about for you, Mike?
Be quick to ask, slow to judge, the aspect of curious about what other information might be there. Sometimes
Yeah.
we feel we have all the data, and maybe not necessarily we need to slow ourselves down, because I was just saying, I was giving an example over here. You have other things you're on the agenda you want to move forward with, and sometimes getting that extra 5 minutes, you get a little data gathering information from another informant, and say, will
Yeah.
you might make a better decision in the long run.
Yeah. This stuff, like anything else in our lives, if we want to get good at something, it requires repetition. And as we practice thinking about these and talking about these and working on these week after 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 week, they become just part of who we are. It doesn't happen without that, but this is the beginning of that. So I appreciate your engagement so far this morning.
We're going to go over scenarios. It's basically, you ever see that TV show on ABC, What Would You Do? This is what would you do. And so here's how it's going to work. I'm going to share a scenario with you. I'm going to read it to you. Okay? And then and then in your groups, you talk about which fundamentals you would use, would come into play in dealing with this situation. And notice I said fundamentals. Each one of these, and it happened in the first group and it'll happen here, multiple fundamentals came into play in each of the scenarios. Spend about 5, 6, 7 minutes. I'll be walking around to assist, and I'll ask maybe for 1 or 2 of the ones you came up with, and then we'll move on. And then what we'll do is, then I'll solicit some responses. So that's how we'll do it. Are there any questions so far? Great, then let's get started. All right, scenario number 1. A coworker is not giving 100% each day and is not working as hard as the other people on your team. As a result, more work is falling on the rest of the team. No one on your team has shared this with your direct supervisor because everyone is friends with this coworker. Furthermore, you assume that your direct supervisor must know, as, in your opinion, it is quite obvious. This has been going on for several weeks and nothing has been done. What would you do? I heard some really great discussions going on in the groups, so good job there. So which group would like to start with thoughts of your group?
So we came up with approaching it by fundamental number 22, which was be quick to ask and slow to judge, to kind of almost assess the situation by saying, hey, maybe you go by asking not so much intrusive, but as a personal, hey, is everything all right, to that person. Just to not come at them like, well, your work's not productive, what's your problem?
Right.
Maybe saying you're going around and asking a personal but concerning question to kind of relate to them.
I think I like to set and ask for expectations. Maybe that person does not understand what's expected of them. Mm-hmm. So maybe that's where the disconnect is, that they clearly don't understand what they're supposed to be doing. So if their manager were to set the expectations clearly towards them, maybe they wouldn't have the disconnect.
Also, that work from the assumption that people are good, fair, and honest. That is a good person here, and so there must be more to the story. All right. Okay, let's go on to scenario number 2. Ready? Here we go. A brewery rep is out working the market with an RSR, a sales rep. The sales rep reports back to you that the brewery rep made a promise to support a new feature on the Saturday night of that account, at this high volume on-premise account. The problem is we already have a feature on that night with a bigger KBC brand. Already had an exclusive, and now this brewery rep put set up another feature, now competing against a bigger brand of ours that was already in existence. So how do you handle the situation? Okay? Let's start. Okay. What do? We got this brewery up here. Murph.
We kind of started looking at it where I think a couple people said there's steps to, you can apply the fundamentals in a series of steps. And I think that if you were faced with this sort of problem, first you'd want to utilize number 11 and work with a sense of urgency. Then, Jerry suggested you want to speak straight to whoever it is, the brewery rep, your district manager, the account, in order to convey your concerns about it.
Okay, give us one more.
And then in order to create a win-win situation.
Okay, so sense of urgency, speak straight, win-win. Okay, good start.
A lot of times, if this situation happens, you take a lot of pride in your work. You got the deal in the first place, you locked it in, so you have a commitment there that needs to be honored. But you get your back up a little bit because maybe you take it personally, and you get defensive. And it's just a normal human nature response. So if you're thinking about this, faith and trust create better relationships and generate better results. And you partner. Just think that, first of all, get it in your head that this person has a job to do, and they care about what they do just like I do. Let's find the win-win is where we jump to next.
Situation last year in one of our casino accounts where one of our brewery reps went in and basically took one of our lines and replaced it with one of his. It was, if I remember correctly, it might have been a harp line for a Blue Moon line. And immediately our reaction was, what are they doing going in there and replacing our lines? But the reality is, we're going to sell a lot more Blue Moon in that draft line than a harp line. So, I mean, your immediate reaction sometimes is, oh my God, they're in there doing this to me. In reality, it was actually the right thing to do for all parties involved, the account included, because now they're selling more beer.
Okay, great. Let's move on to scenario number 3. You are considering revising a procedure that has been in existence for many years. Due to changes in technology, you would like to eliminate some steps while changing others that you see will bring greater efficiencies. Should you move forward? Okay, any questions, clarifications? Okay, let's go.
I took out of that, it was very singularly focused. There was no great idea for companies to do.
Whatever that procedure is, they're embracing to set and ask for expectations.
Okay. What do we got? Who's first? I think Team 3 want to go. Kayla?
First, you said check the ego. Want to make sure that we're giving out the solutions or the ideas, and not just because we think it's a great idea and it has to be implemented. We don't want to just get credit. It has to be something that's going to work for the company as a whole. Then improvement never ends. Because we've done it that way doesn't mean it's the right way to do it, just like you spoke about efficiency. We need to see if there's ways to improve, approach it differently, if it saves time, money, whatever the case may be, and then talk to our peers, see if there's a consensus that yes, this is a good idea, and then embrace it so that we can move forward and implement it and go from there.
Okay, what else do we have?
We would use 16 to lead you to 18.
Mm-hmm.
Improvement never ends. Obviously, with this company, we change every day. So there absolutely are changes that can be made to make us run more efficiently. I know we do it very well. And with that, you want to embrace the change, make everybody come on board.
We talked about it being, we're all in the customer service business, so if it's something that helps the entire organization, then we're providing a customer service by bringing that idea forward. And in the same part, making quality personal. Now, if it's a really good idea and you're looking to improve the quality within yourself, even to have that quality and customer service.
Great stuff. And I think that's a great way to close out scenario number 3. That's terrific. So great job, everybody. Thank you. Excellent. We are going to scenario number 4. The owner of one of your largest hand-delivered accounts is aggravated. So not a forklift, a hand stop. The owner of one of your largest hand-delivered accounts is aggravated. Product was delivered, received, checked in and signed for by one of their employees. The issue is some of the cases received appear to be damaged and leaking. The owner now wants you to schedule a pickup citing a reason other than breakage, but as a seasoned employee, you are fully aware that breakage pickups are regulated by the ABC. What are your next steps? Any clarification questions I can give? All right, let's get started. Okay, interesting scenario. Who wants to go first? Ed.
I think we would start with speak straight, let the retailer know what the expectation is from the ABC rules that are set up. But then we would make quality personal, and we want our customers to love buying from us to try to come up with a win-win situation.
So how do you do that?
There's a few different things you could do. You know, they discover a case of Yingling loose that's leaking. You know, offer to bring them repack.
Good.
Get some 6-packs. Now they got 3 sellable 6-packs, and maybe they're left with now just one or 2 broken bottles. Maybe there's an account that sells singles. You can just get a couple of single bottles, and now we're back to 4 6-packs. So they're salvaging everything for them. They love working with us. Love buying from us because we've taken care of it. But the speaking straight so that it doesn't become a weekly occurrence. Letting them know we're doing this for them, take care of it, but this is what the expectation is. I can't come in here every week and do this thing for you.
Or if it happened that day, send the driver back. Pick it up, take it off the bill, and stop it before that.
Right. One thing, and to that point, one thing that I purposely did, I didn't say an hour later, I didn't say the next day, I didn't say a week later. So that is very relevant to that, because if it's an hour later, it's not, it's definitely to bring the driver back is definitely an option. Now they may have left the area, but it's definitely an option. Whereas if the owner was on vacation, it's 5 days later, and he sees this, that's a different scenario.
The owner of the store, they want an explanation and they want a solution right away. It's either district manager or somebody from operations get a call, and then you have to find a way to make it happen within means.
If nothing else, you're acknowledging the problem. You're acknowledging the situation. You're acknowledging that you got his message, or you understand that we're aware of it. That's terrific. We're going to move on to our next scenario, which is scenario number 5. There is a scheduled meeting that is getting close to its ending time. Upon this ending time, you are scheduled for another meeting 5 minutes after the current meeting ends. The dialogue in the meeting you're in is strong and engaging, and you are getting very close to solving an issue. You decide to finish that meeting that is taking an additional 15 minutes beyond the scheduled end time. What would you do? Okay? Okay. All right, who's got a comment? Who wants to make the first comment? Joel? Dan?
Yeah, we were just talking. Number one would be do the right thing. And what we mean by that is if we are in a meeting, you have to take the time to respect the person who you're meeting with next, to let them know. But before going into that, would be if you do have back-to-back meetings, letting the second person know that you are in a meeting, and if for any reason you run late, that would be the reason why. You're not blowing them off.
Great one. Absolutely. I agree with that. What else we got?
I think it's important when you're in that situation to take the moment with the people you're meeting with and say, gentlemen, ladies, I need 2 minutes, whether it be walking next door to the next meeting room, picking up the phone and calling them personally, even if you get their voicemail, and explaining to them from ear to ear. So there isn't this depersonalized communication back. When you do it personally, I think that communicates to them that you truly do value their time.
Brian?
It goes into number 4 with knowing everyone in the customer service business, like know what your customers need and want. So if it's a customer that you know, you can kind of hang out for a little bit if he doesn't have a busy schedule. If you have that good relationship, you can pop out real quick. Got caught up in this, but I will be to you. Is there anything you need in the meantime? Or if it's somebody that you know has to be in and out quick, then you can discuss that.
All right, great. Let's move on. Number 6. All right, doing good. You're in attendance at a pre-scheduled weekly meeting discussing the final steps of a new company policy. The discussion about this particular subject has been going on for about 20 minutes. A coworker sitting across from you who has a stake in the decision making has been on their iPod or iPad for the majority of those 20 minutes. It is apparent that this individual has not been engaged in the dialogue around this very important subject. No one in the meeting has challenged the coworker to get engaged in the dialogue or to tell them to shut down their iPad. How would you handle? Okay. Any clarification questions? Okay. All right, seems that we're just about ready. Okay. We got scenario number 6 here. We got a meeting and someone's on his iPad. So, Kyle.
Number 10, I think set and ask for expectations before the meeting starts. All electronics be set off for no communication.
Great one.
Which could lead into speaking straight. Be quick to resolve misunderstandings through direct communication with that person directly. And then also, number 22, be quick to ask and slow to judge. They may be using that iPad to take notes or something like that, so they don't know.
The iPad is a wonderful note-taking device, so that's great. That's a great one.
6, we are a team, and we're all involved in this. And number 10, we're looking for expectations.
Doing the right thing. I mean, somebody in the meeting should maybe speak up and make sure that that person is listening and understanding, and also to what's the speak one?
Speak straight?
Yeah, speak straight. Be honest with that person. Let them know that it's offensive that they're not listening. You feel like you don't have their full attention, especially if they're a decision maker. You want them to be listening to everything.
Absolutely, absolutely, Mike.
Number 6, we're a team and we depend on each other's success. And when we make a commitment to give time to be within a meeting, that we're fulfilling that commitment and working towards a goal, what the meeting is set for. And when there's distractions, say if it is in a scenario that played out, which I thought was a good one by Kyle, that you don't know if they're taking notes.
Sure.
Obviously, that there needs to be ground rules prior to the meeting and following through that and working towards that goal in the time limit that's allotted, and so that we're fulfilling our commitment as being a team member within that group.
All right, let's go on to the next. Good. All right, I think we're going to have time for one more. This was an interesting one, the last group. Okay. A customer has a status of COD, and they have a POA. Now, a POA is a payment on account, and they've not, just to explain for those that aren't familiar with the term, a POA is if they have a past balance due, then we put an extra charge on an invoice so that they start to pay down that old debt. Okay, that's called POA, payment on account. So a customer has a status of COD with us with a POA of $150. This customer is getting a delivery today. The driver is at the account, and the account only has a check for the amount of the delivery, which is $500. So they only has a check for the amount of delivery and is requesting that you waive the POA payment. What is your decision and why? Okay.
Whatever that procedure is, give the department grace to set and ask for expectations.
Okay, guys, we're just about out of time, so let's leave a few minutes for discussion. It's been fantastic dialogue, really has been. I think some people learned what a POA was this morning, so that's great too. Added bonus. So, who has a comment? Nikki.
I think seek to create a win-win solution. Maybe they can't afford that $150, but we come with an agreement where they at least try to pay something towards the POA as opposed to just not paying it completely.
Right. So they can pay some of it. Now, that's absolutely now the watch out if they're on certified check or money order, they may not have the ability to get that while the driver's there. But that's absolutely because we're thinking about ideas. We're looking for. I love options. So we're thinking about options, and that's certainly one of them. Who's next? Scott.
The practice blameless problem solving. You don't want to accuse that, hey, you're on POA, you know you're on POA. work with them. You already shot down my idea about picking up empty kegs because they're not a draft account.
But we're working on it.
Call Karen and see somehow, even though they're on COD, maybe they do have a credit.
Maybe they have credits on the account. Great one. That's absolutely something we do. Do they have credits on the account? Go on.
I mean, and look for a solution that way. But I mean, at the end of the day, you got to find a way to make it happen, because if you don't send the beer to them, A, you don't have beer there, so they're not selling your beer. B, you just pissed off a customer. So it's a lose-lose now.
I'm going to keep things in perspective. There are bigger problems, like it says here.
Absolutely.
Lighthearted, and you're always smiling. That's the other person.
Say, I throw out the example of Hurricane Sandy blew through, and say an account is on POA, and say they had to close the door for 3 days, and they haven't been generating any cash flow, but you go back and you speak with Karen, and you look at the history that, hey, you know, they are paying off their debt. They've been, you know, religiously every week paying their POA, but this week, due to the, you know, the weather damage and loss of electricity, they didn't generate enough cash flow to pay that POA. So you look to, you know, you take that into consideration instead of just shutting the door. You know, you have that solution because
Absolutely.
they are trying to honor their commitment. Obviously, something beyond their control happened to them, and they can't fulfill that commitment this week, but we look to catch up the following week and give them that opportunity.
Terrific. All right. As I open with, a really exciting day. I mean, I don't remember ever having this many people in the room together, all departments, people that have been here. Where's John Purdy? In the back. John's been here since 10 o'clock last night. Really. So now here we are. We've invested this time, 3 hours is a lot of time, and we're all on busy schedules. So now it's up to us to really put it into practice. As a reminder, you'll be seeing the email and a voicemail. Everyone have email and voicemail? I guess the better question is, everyone read their email and listen to their voicemail? So look for that. That's going to be coming out every Sunday night. You'll see the fundamental of the week, and as David said, we will continue that and roll that week after week, and really look to where we institutionalize these fundamentals, and it becomes ingrained in our culture. And it really is a reference point, I think, a great reference point for us daily as we go about our business, as we interact with one another, with our retailers, with our suppliers, our vendors, everyone we deal with. And I think that again, a great opportunity for us to make what is a very, very good company into, as David said, a world-class company. And so I thank you for your attention. I thank you for your commitment to this process. And I think the sky's the limit for us. So with that, I'd like to turn back over to David for his final comments.
So 3 last comments. One is with regard to what I call rituals, the practicing of doing this every week. To have some expectation for what's going to come a little bit further out. So for these next 24 weeks, as Mark described, he's going to be sending on Sunday night an email and a voicemail to each of you with just his thoughts on this fundamental, what's important about it. Following that 24 weeks, what's going to happen is the senior leadership team is each going to take a week, and they're going to cycle through for the next 24 weeks. And what's going to happen after that is it's you guys. So you guys are going to get the opportunity to send your own message, to choose a week that you particularly like that fundamental and it's meaningful for you. You've had a lot of chance to think about this morning which ones resonate the most for you. You're going to have a chance to take a week and send a message out to all of your peers with, what does this mean to you? Why is this important? And we're going to do this week after week after week for the next years and years and years and years into the future. And so we also talked about earlier that every meeting you're going to begin with the first agenda item in every meeting is going to be the fundamental of the week, and just 2, 3, 4, 5-minute discussion. But every single week for the rest of your career, we're going to talk about this stuff. So when we do that, this really becomes part of how you operate. Second thing I want to say is that it's really important to understand that these fundamentals are what we're committed to, and yet, as Mark mentioned earlier at the beginning this morning, when he said that we're all not going to be perfect. you know, we talked about ones that are challenging and why they're challenging. This is hard stuff. Yeah, it all sounds great on paper. Yeah, that'd be great to be like that. Well, we're all humans, and it's not easy to do this. And so the question is, what happens when somebody falls short? Because we will. And what I want you to keep in mind is that when we fall short, as we will, there are at least two different ways we can respond to that. One way is we could say, see, I knew it was a bunch of bullshit. See, he didn't do it. Yeah, it's just garbage. Another way is we could say, gee, he's human just like me. Let's support each other in getting back on track. So when you see a teammate be challenged by a particular fundamental, go to them with support and coaching and help to support them, because we're all committed. Everyone here is committed to this is what we want to be, but again, we're not perfect. So let's make sure that when we fall short, we help each other and support each other and coach each other in being more this way so that we can be more and more consistently this way. That's how human behavior changes. You know, most of us, if simply intellectually knowing it caused us to change our behavior, everybody would be eating right, losing weight, and exercising, right? But it's not that simple. So it takes repetition and practice and support. So we want to support each other. The last thing I'll say is I really want to thank you guys for your engagement today. And specifically what I mean is that the way in which you really took on the conversations that we asked you to have, that, you know, it could have been easy for you in a different group to say, I don't feel like doing this crap. What do we got to do this? But instead, each one of you, and really every one of you, I don't think I saw a single exception, every one of you really took the conversation seriously and really applied yourself to think about and to take on these fundamentals and think about, what does this really mean for you? And what is this about? And what would it be like to practice this? And that kind of engagement that you've had today is a great indicator, to me at least, as an observer, that you have the foundation to really build this and to really be that world-class company. As Mark said, you're a great company. But this is about being world-class, about going beyond just being good or great. And you have the foundation to do that. So again, I appreciate your engagement today, and I'll be along the way coaching and helping anywhere that I can. So great work. Enjoy the rest of the day.